Is that? How perfect is that? And how perfect you are. How exciting to be in this place that you are. You've got such a great lineage. Of course, I only know from John McLean, but John McLean to Amanda Sue Briggs to Reverend Alex. I think that's pretty exciting. I checked in at the little Daisy Motel last night, and the lady says, by the time you retire, which is a long time from now, you will have stayed in every room in this motel. She says, it's my goal. And I said, this is my third time and probably my last, because they got a minister now. I'm very happy for you. I'm very happy for you. A colleague of mine talks about do-overs. Do-over, like that opportunity you have when you've done something and then you go, and you want to do it over. I have do-overs all the time with my puzzles. Back in the olden days, like 4 years ago, I would print out universal Sudoku puzzles. They're the kinds with the numbers and the letters. And I would print them off the internet. And then I would take my pencil and I would work them for hours. And not infrequently, but from time to time, I would get really close to the end and recognize that I had made some kind of untraceable error. So in my Christmas stocking, I used to get these giant erasers. And I could just erase the whole thing and do it over again. And I'd completely forgotten about this until Tuesday when I was looking for Post-it notes in my little drawer of office supplies, and I pulled open the drawer and I'm rummaging around. Of course you recognize, because I'm a minister, it was in perfect order. But I'm rummaging around in it, and there in the back are 5 pristine giant erasers. Oh, yeah. So whether you do paper puzzles or have evolved like I have and do them on my phone now, that do-over is a feeling that we have for many things, for conversations, for meetings, or for projects. When it's that moment when we recognize that we have some error in our thinking or an error in our feelings or our desires that set us in a trajectory that we wish we hadn't gone in. You know, when we wish things had been different, so the conversation ended up differently, or the meeting ended differently, or the project ended differently. And it's that differently recognition that gives us feelings like, well, they have labels. Labels like angst and regret and frustration and fear. And what we have to recognize is when those feelings become big enough, then we will probably actually have the urge to rethink or have that greater desire for a do-over. Now, I know that words once said can't be unsaid, and actions once done can't be undone. But there does exist a place or a state of being where we recognize that we're in one place in consciousness and in experience, and there is a desire to have that other experience. So what is it that we can do now? Like, it just has to reach that point of urgency where we may not know where we're going, but we know we're going somewhere, right? It has to reach that point of urgency. And because we get into that experience of urgency, we begin to develop strategies for how to relieve that tension. When I was a little girl, I used to get nightmares all the time. And I don't know what you do when you have a bad dream, but one of the things that I used to do was wake myself up and then imagine a different ending. Like, imagine a different scenario. And if I tried to go back to sleep so many times and that didn't work, I knew that if I went into my parents' bedroom and just touched my mother's hand, that all the goodness that was in my mother would come into me. And then from that state of mind, I could go back to sleep. So we think as adults, we have to teach children all the things that they need to know. But in fact, children actually have a great deal of wisdom. So how did I know at 5, 6, and 7 that that was a spiritual practice? Like, how did I don't know. My mother didn't teach me, I can tell you that for sure. But I just knew on some level. And that really, truly is a spiritual practice that carries me today and that carries many of us today. When we get into an experience that we've had, a recognition that we've had an experience, or we're right in the middle of something, and we awaken to the idea that there could be something different, what we do is we raise our consciousness into that God mind super consciousness state, right? So it's really important to go, I've awakened to where I am, and I know that if I can just get to the place, if I can make a connection, if I can arc my energy, if I can bridge this gap, if I can do something, I can get into that higher state of consciousness. So spiritual practice then, right? Oh, we need to think a better thought. That's what Abraham Hicks would say. We just need to think a better thought. But we need to intentionally say, regardless of what's going on, right? Regardless of what's going on, all I have to do, so simple. All I have to do, it's so hard. It is so hard to say I'm going to rise above in consciousness where I am in order to make that connection, to arc my energy, to build a bridge, to traverse that gap. So the minding the gap really is all about that in-between state. It's about that time when we recognize that we're healers. Healers are about transforming. What is transforming? It's becoming free. It's changing our minds. It's making a shift. It's all of those things. It's flying. It's soaring. It's just all of those things that we can do beginning in thought. Because there is a time when we recognize we no longer want to be there and we are not yet here or where we want to be. And I think yet is one of the most powerful words in our English language. Yet. I'm not here yet. I want to be, but I'm not here yet. And so what kind of activities besides thinking and meditation can we engage in that help us get from the no longer to the not yet? So it's physically, we can do things that will match our spiritual desire. So if you play golf or tennis or softball or any kind of sport like football, you know, our young man in the back plays football, right? You want to play with people. You want to work out with people. You want to get engaged in the game with people who are better than you. You want to immerse yourself in that winning mentality, because not only does it help you, your physical game, it helps your skills improve. And I'm doing this like I'm playing tennis because that was my game. I was not football and I'm not golf. Yeah. But it's like that's your skills will improve. So not only is it like and emotional and spiritual, it's also physical. So if you wanted to, back in the day, okay, there's a young person here, but there's 2 young people here. There's more than that probably watching online. Back in the day, when you were making choices about going to a vocational trade school or going to a university, you wanted to pick the best one that you could get into because you wanted to immerse yourself in excellence. You wanted to be with the smartest people you could find. You wanted to be with the best skilled technicians you could find, whether it was elevator repair or air conditioning repair. Yeah, that's a big business here in Arizona. Right? You wanted to be with the best so you could be your best. When people come to me and they say, I've got a diagnosis or I'm in the middle of a health challenge, will you please pray with me? One of the things I often do is I invite them. I say, let the healthy cells in your body, because there are way more healthy cells in your body, let your healthy cells in your body remind those unhealthy cells what their spiritual pattern for perfection is. Right? Because, listen, if it's an army, those unhealthy cells are outnumbered, right? But you're inviting that high watch, that high level, that super conscious level to lift everything up. So when we're in the middle, when we're in that gap, it's all about I want to, I intend to, I am now placing my mind in that state of oneness with the divine. I am now willing to be in that alignment so I can have more love, more joy, more peace in my life. I want that. And why don't we do that? It's because we forget. We just forget. We get busy. We get consumed by those differences. We can get consumed by that in-between stuff, and we allow our consciousness to be in a different place. But it's really, truly possible to make that connection, to arc that energy, to build that bridge, to mind that gap. So let me ask you this. Have you ever lived in one place and then lived in another place? Have you ever had one job and then you had a different job? Have you ever had a diagnosis and you were cured or in remission, or you no longer had that cold? Were you ever in traffic and then you were no longer in traffic? So does Cottonwood get traffic? Okay, I haven't experienced it, which is probably okay, but a big city like LA, every day, all day, it's traffic, and then you're not in that traffic. So you've had the experience, the known sense of what it's like to be one place and then actually be in a different place. Not even just a location, but an experience. And not even just an experience, but a consciousness. A consciousness. So you've had that felt sense, that felt experience. So I'm going to say, you've got this. You absolutely have the capacity. You have demonstrated the capacity to do what it takes to make that connection, to arc your energy, to be the healer that you were called to be. I think in the last 5 years in particular, we've recognized our call to healing. The pandemic opened up all that physical awareness, but there was so much more that went on in the last 5 years. I don't even want to talk about the administration. I mean, it's just like one example, starting with George Floyd. I mean, it's like there's just all these examples of how many times we get challenged on a deeper and deeper or a bigger and bigger scale. Unity provides support with prayer, with guidance, with teachings, with practices that are practical, that we can pick up in an instant and put into our life. But there's all kinds of energy healing. You don't have to look far to come into the same space with ancient wisdom. Acupuncture is 8,000 years old. 8,000 years old. And it's still being used because it redirects flow in your energetic system. It redirects flow in your body. Yoga is 5,000 years old. Also ancient wisdom about coming into alignment from a structural and an emotional and a spiritual perspective. I have observed just from driving around Cottonwood that this is a very progressive place. And even just walking into the building at Unity here in Verde Valley, you don't even have to leave the building to encounter or engage in that kind of energetic healing, that energetic support that we can give ourselves. Because it's a multifaceted, multi-level approach. We have to do the physical, we have to do the spiritual, and the emotional, and the mental, in order to maximize our expression of being that healer. In the 14th century, there was a mystic, and an unknown mystic, who wrote a little tiny book, some people call it a pamphlet, called The Cloud of Unknowing. Now, I looked at the internet to say, how old does wisdom have to be in order to classify as ancient wisdom? And you know what I got back? Stuff about wisdom teeth. I mean, you have to be so specific with the internet. So if something was written in the 14th century, it's considered wisdom of the ages. It's not considered ancient wisdom. However, the Cloud of Unknowing was based on the work of Plato. Plato is ancient wisdom. Okay, so I got that base covered. But in this small little pamphlet, it's really a book about prayer. And it's taking practices that Plato taught and putting them in the modern language or the consciousness at the time. Plato was about purifying your thoughts. Peel away any misconceptions. Peel away any misunderstandings. Does this sound familiar? Yeah, I made kind of a big deal about Plato because Plato is the actual beginning of new thought. So we can Unity can trace its roots all the way back to Plato. So I kind of made a big deal about that. But I'm also making a big deal about the Cloud of Unknowing, because so many other mystics were inspired by this teeny tiny book. And if you show the slide, St. John of the Cross says, "In the dark night of the soul, bright flows the river of God." And I love this because I think it's perfect for right where we are. Because we're always between the no longer and the not yet. We are always in this liminal space. And it's how we live in the liminal space that makes a difference. There's a woman named Dr. Naomi Remen, and she does a lot of mind, body, soul work. She does a lot of, there's a word for it, holistic, thank you, holistic work. And she looks at people and she says, in this place, in this liminal space that we live in all the time, there are two kinds of people. There are the alive and curious people, and there are the people who are afraid. So in Unity, we look at things metaphysically, and so I'm like, yeah, these are polarities of the same person. These are two parts of ourselves. We are either on this polarity scale between being alive and curious and being afraid. And when we're alive and curious, we're open to possibility, like our minds, our hearts, our bodies, all kinds of possibilities are open to us. And then sometimes, because we know in Unity it's always a choice and a responsibility, we tip that scale and we go to the other end of the polarity. And we wonder in our right mind, we wonder in our sane mind, why anybody would ever choose fear. but we choose it all the time. We choose it all the time. It's like, why would I ever forget my oneness with God? Why would I ever feel separate? Why am I feeling separate? Why is this happening to me? There's a lot of payoff to being a victim. I mean, there's like these sneaky payoffs for being a victim. So I get sometimes when we're asleep, when we're not fully conscious, those kinds of choices. But when we make the choice to be fully alive, we recognize that even in the dark night of the soul, even in this unknown, bright flows the river of God. Bright flows the river of God. So all we have to do is tune into that illuminated consciousness, that bright light, that guidance that's always here for us. And then we have a way to be, a way of being that's really fully alive and curious. The Cloud of Anointing also says this: take God at face value, as he is. Accept his good graciousness as you would accept a plain, simple, soft compress when sick. Take a hold of him and press him against your unhealthy self, just as you are, and try to let your desire touch the kind and generous God, just as he is, because those who touch him know good health that never ends. Touch him. Reach for him. In unity, we know we're not separate from God, but in our mind and in our thoughts, when we have those errors, we sometimes think we are, and we sometimes feel we are. So in this gap, in minding this gap, make the connection. Arc your energy. Be the healer that you were called to be. Because I think in this decade, it's more important than ever to be mindful. Regardless of how you feel your viewpoint is, it's now that we need to touch God and bring forth the healing presence that we are. So as we go into meditation, let's say this affirmation together. I am a healer. Healing is how I mind the gap between the no longer and not yet times of my life. Bright flows the river of God, guiding my way. Take a breath into that. I don't know if it's the first time you've declared yourself a healer. I don't know if it's the first time that you're letting other people know that you're a healer. It's something you have been and will always be. So bright flows the river of God, guiding our way. Let's close our eyes and come into a time of meditation. With a sigh, with a breath, with a redirection of our worried mind. This is the time and the place where we peel away any thought that includes I cannot. Any thought that includes but not for me. Any thought that contains an excuse or a rationale. Those thoughts have served each one of us and brought us to where we are today. And indeed, They may have been the very thoughts that generated that uncomfortable place of help. Help me. Help me see things differently. Help me see that bright river of God in my heart, in my mind, and in my body. Help me be the healer I need right now. To realign to a better feeling thought. To remember oneness with God. To strengthen faith. To stand in our power. And to be. To be. Breathing deeply and easily. We bring our bodies, we bring our minds, we bring our heart back to this time and place. Coming out of that cloud of unknowing with a greater sense of peace, a greater sense of direction, a greater sense of conviction. We have the spiritual pattern for perfection within us. We are whole. And we are blessed. And with another breath, we come back to this time and place, opening our eyes in gratitude for that which has supported us. In gratitude for this unity, community, who walks this journey with us. So it is, and so we let it be. Amen.